Okay, and hey everyone, welcome again to my channel. And my name is Ruben, and I'm from Colombia. In this opportunity, I'm interviewing a guy from Canada, and he's Azren, the language nerd. And in the idea with his interview is for those who are learning Spanish, people that love Spanish, but they are kind of wondering about how long time they would spend in learning Spanish. So here we have a master in Spanish, and I want Asren do a little bit of tell us a little bit about yourself, Asren.
Sure. So, hello, my name is Azren. Um, I am from Canada, as was previously stated. And I speak many languages. I like learning languages a lot. So, I speak English, French, Spanish, Gujarati, and then I've been learning Mandarin for about 4 or 5 years now. And for me right now, I'm focusing mostly language-wise anyway. I'm focusing on learning 8 different languages by the time I am 45. So that gives me about 19 years. In terms of work, I teach various languages. So I teach English, French, and Spanish. And yeah, I live in Canada, Calgary, very close to the mountains. And yeah, that's a quick intro on me.
Okay, okay, cool. Well, so let me confess you something here. Is that we did an interview in Spanish, and
Mm,
I tend to speak faster when I speak Spanish, and I feel like it is kind of a disadvantage when you are talking because no matter the if you're native, so if you talk faster, for me it's cool to speak slow when I spoke slow Spanish with you, or kind of an understandable Spanish. I feel that different. It's much
mm.
better. And answering, so I've heard many of your videos, and it is a good sensation listen to you and talking to you at the same time, and that is a good one.
Yeah.
And well, let's start with some questions about the Spanish language. And the first one is, how did you learn Spanish in Canada? How did you manage to get to know that level you have at the moment?
Mhm. So I started Spanish about 10 years ago, so a long time ago. I started by taking a couple classes in high school. And oh, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't say this in the Spanish interview, but I just remembered. I wanted to study Spanish when I was 15, so I was in grade 10, but I couldn't because I
Yeah.
was going to France for 3 months. And when I was in France, they offered Spanish, but the Spanish level was like an intermediate level and not beginner. So I couldn't take it there. So when I was in France, I used to go to websites and try to teach myself some Spanish. And
Yeah.
then when I came back to Canada is when I officially started. So I was 16. And I remember because and I can't believe I forgot to say this in the Spanish interview, but so I came back, all of my friends were taking basically level two Spanish, and
Yeah.
I wanted to take level two Spanish with them. So I went and I took a placement test to see if they could let me in level two Spanish and skipped level one. Somehow I passed, which was hallelujah. And yeah, then I started when I was 16. So 2 classes in high school. I majored in French and Spanish in university, traveled abroad to Peru and Chile for a while. And then when I was in university, there's a place called the Centro Español, so the Spanish Center. And basically, it's a
Yeah.
room where there's a lady who worked there, and you could basically go and practice Spanish. You could talk, you could listen to people, you could hang out, you could. So I used to go there 2, 3 hours a day. So that with my classes, I was probably doing 4, 5 hours of Spanish every single day of the week.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, so how do you do to manage the time to practice Spanish, or how do you maintain the level at the Spanish that you have? How do you do that?
Nowadays, to maintain it, I speak Spanish. I speak all of my language basically daily. So English, I live in Canada, so that's easy. French, Spanish, Mandarin, like everything gets used daily, whether it's through teaching languages, whether it's through talking with friends, whether it's by whatever. So I'm always using them regularly, which is I guess, the easiest way to not forget them.
Okay, okay. And then I know that you have studied language is like a passion you have,
Hmm.
it is super great, and I think that is one thing important when it comes to learn or practice any language. And do you have any advice that you say, okay, you have to know this if you want to start learning Spanish, and what would you tell about it?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just to be like consistency is the big one, I think. Being consistent and practicing and studying and using your language regularly is a really, really big one. So again, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't particularly care how you're learning. Take classes or read books or videos or whatever you're doing fine. But you have to be consistent with it. And that's the biggest thing I find. Obviously, the strategy matters too, like how you're studying. But I'd rather you focus on, like, I think everybody can watch this video and they could work on consistency. It's difficult to say pick a better strategy because it's hard for some people to figure out what a better strategy is.
Yeah,
But
yes.
everyone can be consistent. That's something everyone can walk away going, okay, that's something you can all try and figure out on how you can be more consistent with whatever studying or whatever language you're studying.
Okay, based upon your experience, so do you think, let's say, a people with 20 years and a guy from 14 years old, they learn Spanish at the same time, taking into account that both of them are consistent?
So 14, one is 14, one is 30, you said?
20, and let's
Oh,
say,
20 and 40?
yeah,
That's an interesting. I don't know. So the one thing I'll say about someone who's 20 is I
yeah,
mean, that's a very good question. Initially, I would have to say the 20-year-old has an advantage, but not because of what most people would think. It's not because their brain is different. Obviously, their brain is different. Of course it is. But I think they have an advantage more because of lifestyle. Their lifestyle is more conducive to somebody who could spend a lot of time on the language and actually develop it versus a 40-year-old. You might have a 6-year-old child, you might have a 10-year-old child, you might have kids, you might have a mortgage, you might already have a different lifestyle that is harder to change, or maybe not even harder to change. Maybe you're just less willing to change. You like how things are. So less because of the brain or things like that, more just because of lifestyle. I think that would have to be my answer as I think about it.
okay. The lifestyle is, in this case, who matters, all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, based on your experience as well, and I think is an important one, how long do you think it's gonna take to anyone who start learning Spanish, and how long does it take to get a conversational level in a decent way?
Yeah. Depends on how many hours you're studying a week. Let's just start there. Because it might take you 4 years and it might take you 1 year. If it took you 1 year, you are probably, for most people, studying at a heck of a lot more intensively than someone who took four to get to like a conversational level. And when I say conversational, I'll define what I mean by it. I mean that you can have a one-on-one conversation with somebody about for let's say 3 to 5 minutes on day-to-day regular topics. You'll understand 70% of what the person says, let's say on average. You generally can say the things you want to say, although you probably make mistakes. That would be my definition of conversational, something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think someone could get there in a year if they were consistent enough, and yeah, if they're consistent enough and putting enough time into it.
Okay. Okay, here again, who matters is being consistent and not losing the attention and the dedication the language needs,
Yeah,
right?
and actually, I should say one more thing. I'll add one more thing. It's funny; these are even though they're very similar questions on the Spanish and English, I'm getting different ideas now that it's the second time going through it. So consistency matters, but you also have to make sure that you are being consistent and you're being consistent and finding opportunities to apply the things that you've been learning. and not, yeah, let's say that you have to be applying the things you're learning as well. It can't just be consistently writing notes or consistently watching videos or only consistently reading a textbook or only that will help you improve, by the way. You will learn a lot, absolutely, and you can learn a whole lot from that. But there also has to be moments where you're applying the things that you've been learning in the videos, in the textbook, in the readings, by writing whatever you're writing, by etc.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you with that. You know, it is important. It is like a different connection when you have the way that you use your word and the way that you, well, reading or doing another stuff. You have to do an
Mhm.
extra exercise to work on your speech, which is a different feel, I guess.
And applying
So
doesn't necessarily mean speaking, doesn't necessarily mean speaking. Applying could even be, um, it could be writing even. It could be that you are, here's a good example. I recently, well, this wasn't recent, approximately, I want to say 6 months ago, I remember talking with someone who one of the things she did to apply her knowledge was she wrote an email in Spanish to
yeah.
a company about taking yoga lessons with the class with that company because they offered classes in Spanish. So she wrote the email in Spanish. Another thing with the same lady is what she did is she called I don't remember what company it was, but there was a company she called for some reason that she's from the States. They offered you could basically call and either English, like the customer care center, you can do the automated instructions in English or in Spanish. She picked automated
Oh,
instructions in Spanish and she practiced by listening to the different options.
that's
That's
cool.
applying your knowledge. Now you're in a real life
Yeah.
situation. So that's not speaking, but it's still applying your knowledge, right? So it doesn't have to be speaking. Could be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Okay, Asren, I appreciate all of your answers, all of your point of view are
Thanks for having me
great.
on.
So and I appreciate that. And yeah, hope many people can get as well the Spanish one and the Spanish interview in the same order for people get to know different accent. I think your accent is cool in Spanish, and I really know you'll see that like you will speak like a native, but you are doing it right now. As you say, this is just about vocabulary. The most vocabulary we learn, the most we can help handle certain situations. Okay,
Mhm.
Answering. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. And
I appreciate it.
yeah, okay,
Sounds
take
good.
care.
We'll talk later.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
See you.
Okay, take care.